And welcome back. Time for Checkpoint. The Jubilee government in their manifesto outlined a long-term strategic plan for transforming Kenya under the pillars of national cohesion and unity, economic transformation, and transparency and accountability. Now, under these pillars, they promise Kenyans key services will be delivered within their first 100 days in office, which expires on Thursday. Of these pledges, they were concentrated in the areas of health and education. On February 20th, 2013, days to the election, the then Jubilee flag bearer Uhuru Kenyatta promised to make Kenya a fairer, healthier, and better educated country. This past Friday, the president sought to defend his track record so far at a meeting with members of the Fourth Estate at State House, Nairobi. Let's listen in.
We have embarked on a mission to connect all our primary schools to the national grid in a 15 billion shilling project. This will enable a success for the 17 billion shilling laptop project. Also benefiting from these interventions are computer laboratories that we are going to have in all our schools for the use by all students. Power to our primary school also benefits local communities who are empowered to grow their small-scale businesses as we light up millions of homes around the country. As part of the promise, we have set aside funds to employ 10,000 teachers. The process of promoting teachers who have stagnated for years will be fast-tracked, while a medical cover, the scheme under the NHIF, is being introduced. The welfare of our teachers will also be improved in line with our economic realities, while still maintaining a public wage bill that is sustainable now and also in the coming years.
And joining us now in studio, our resident political analyst, Professor Edward Kisiangani. He's seated to my far right. In the middle, our new guest this evening. Welcome to Professor Itile Naituli. And of course, to my immediate right, a familiar face, Moses Kuria, a strategist. Thank you all, gentlemen, for coming in. Prof, let's kick the ball off with you, your scorecard of the Jubilee government so far.
Actually, on a scale of 10, they score 0.5. On a scale of 100, probably just 3%. They have disappointed us in a big way. First of all, if you look at the way the Jubilee government has operated, there is always an assurance from the president and the deputy president that we want to have a cohesive nation, and as well, we want to have appointments that reflect the face of Kenya. If you look at their appointments, including the proposals they made to cabinet, most of them are concentrated in sections of the Rift Valley, sections of Northeastern, and sections of the Mount Kenya region. This country is big, and we expected the president to be all-inclusive. And even when he went out of the strongholds of Jubilee, he chose on people who do not, in fact, excite political support in those areas. And so one wonders,
is it about political support or competence?
In fact, including the competence, because political support also goes with competence. If you choose very good people who are competent, also they excite the political support. And in that connection, therefore, you see a problem. And then there is the question of vetting. A number of people that were chosen to head different institutions, some of them have credibility issues. And then the president's wing coalition whipped up support in parliament, and the vetting process was a sham, so that the people that we thought should not have been given a position as principal secretaries and some as cabinet secretaries still walked away and won. And that also undermined the public confidence. And then you can look at the question of corruption. I think the president needs to take charge of corruption and forget about his lieutenants, because a lot of people are undermining this process. We have been told that Kenya is the fourth, according to Transparency International, is the fourth most corrupt country in the country. If you look at that corruption, 2/3 of that corruption comes from the police department. And in the police department, that corruption can be done away with. But a lot of his lieutenants, the president's lieutenants, are resisting a lot of work that is supposed to change these things and fight corruption in the police department and even undertake reforms.
Let me bring in Professor Naituli. He gives them 3%. What do you give them?
I think on a scale of 1 to 10, and given the hand to struggle from changing from one system to a completely new one, I think I'll give them 6.
And why a 6?
The reason is they have managed the transition fairly well. You have to know previous governments didn't have to deal with the vetting. They didn't have to deal with a lot of things that these people have to deal with. So they have managed the transition fairly well. But I also want to agree with my colleague here that if they have to implement their agenda, they must address corruption and address it indirectly. Because it's just not the police. To me, I think police does very little corruption because they will take 200 shillings or 500 on the road.
As opposed to
corruption that takes place in government contracts, in the universities, because corruption seems to have now taken refuge where it's not supposed to be. Because the universities are supposed to be the moral backbone of the republic. And because of the public trust us with these young people to mount them. You have corruption across these universities, and it's a very sad affair. So that I agree with them. Now on the 100-day measure, I wouldn't really put a lot of weight on that because it's not a one, it's a process. And also somebody said today in the newspaper, we like to copy a lot. The 100 days is mainly an
it's
American
a psychological threshold, and also they themselves promised key deliverables, which we'll get into later.
Yes, because they couldn't really do it in the 100 days, given the time taken to construct the government.
All right, Moses?
I think if there's one failure that the Jubilee government has done is not to carry Kenyans with them in terms of the areas of difficulty that they encountered when they embarked on forming government. You recall that they were sworn in on the 9th of April. 9th of April is within the timelines of presenting the budget, i.e. The system that was presenting the budget was still the system from the old administration. And somehow they had to meander through that and get some of their priorities, factored in within the budget making process. That's number one. And number two, of course, the new constitutional requirement in terms of the time that it takes to form an administration was wrong. And I feel that they didn't do a good job of telling Kenyans, look, we promise you this and that, but we don't have an electric switch which you switch on and switch off from the old administration to the new administration.
But what they did say is that within 100 days, you will have free maternal health care, you'll be able to access clinics and all of that for free. But even though that was effected, I think, June 1st, the real question about health care is the question about funding. Right now we stand at 5%. This is the 4th year in a row that Kenya has reduced the amount of spending on health care. Abuja declaration requires 15%. Professor, is there any real honest movement, Kisiangani, sorry, there are two professors today. Yeah. Is there any real commitment towards solving the healthcare question in the country if you don't look at funding?
If you look at the national budget of 1.1 plus a trillion shillings, there is a lot of money concentrated in the executive. And the problem is not even about money. The problem is about, as Moses is saying, the way we budget. How much money should we allocate education? How much money should we allocate healthcare?
A priority problem?
A priority problem, because you see, as he put it, they didn't decide on what to do. You saw that when the teachers started asking for their money, somebody went back to say, oh, we forgot. What this government has been presiding over is seeing members of parliament manipulating it. And as they manipulated it, they walked away with allowances. And the public knows that, even if they are not talking, they have money. They have manipulated the government and then ended up even, crippling the work of the Serem Commission. And now the government is in a dilemma. The MPs who are shouting loudest about devolution and all, they have already pocketed money which they shouldn't be pocketing. So one of the things that the Uhuru Kenyatta administration has failed, it started off by accepting it is not going to raise the wage bill, but it has already been manipulated by the same parliamentarians who are making a lot of noise.
Professor Naituli, so why is it that teachers have to understand the wage bill, but MPs don't?
I think that's the biggest mistake this government has made so far. They should have allowed the Serem Commission to to move in aligning these salaries. They are starting by cutting salaries. They shouldn't be allowed to move down in the government ministries and cut down salaries in every sector. Because by allowing the MPs to get what they wanted, they opened themselves now to challenge from any other worker, now to demand rightfully that this is also my right to get this. The teachers will not be this adamant if the government did not cave in. That caving in denied the independence to the Serem Commission. It removed the moral authority the government had by saying they don't have money. And once that is removed, then you can expect demands, and it's going to be very hard because the salary increment by itself does nothing.
You know, this clamor for salaries within the first 100 days is not new to Jubilee. Actually, the same thing happened in Mwai Kibaki's first 100 days as president. But both these administrations, and I know it's early days for the Jubilee government, have seemed unable to put MPs in their place. So much so that right now there is an argument that the president, Moses, is benefiting from the scuffle between MPs and the Senate and governors because he knows, and that's why he had to give in as far as salaries are concerned, because he needs one house to check on the other.
No, I think before even Moses speaks on that, Anne, there's a little problem here. The question of priority, we have already mentioned it. But what Kenya expected from the Jubilee government was a rebirth of the nation and a new constitutional dispensation. So the president didn't need to give in. Secondly, the president had a goodwill. Even the public was supporting him over the issue of the MPs. He didn't have to give in. What is he going to tell people in 2017 if he can succumb to these people? Some of them, and I dare say, from the opposition wing, for example, in CORD, have been helping the president to pursue policies that are misleading, and they will disown him very soon, especially with regard to salaries of the teachers and especially with the salaries of the MPs. So he should actually overcome that.
Moses.
Can I start now?
Yes. My apologies, but that's okay.
I think it was unfortunate that the president or the executive had to give in to the, I would call it the intimidation of parliament. But I think I see a much bigger problem than whether this is parliament or whether these are teachers, whether these are medical people. The president has been saying it consistently, that the issue of the wage bill vis-a-vis our GDP, vis-a-vis our taxes is a problem. Now we can point the finger to this guy or to that guy. We can say it is the teachers, we can say it is parliament, but I think as a country we need to take a collective, breathe in, breathe out sort of situation.
But isn't there double speak on this public wage bill? When it comes to MPs, it's okay, we can graduate them. There's a plan for that, but when it comes to teachers, no.
No, I think it boils down to negotiation. I see it as a negotiation. I think the MPs took a negotiated settlement with the executive on the issue of salaries. And I think what the teachers are doing even now, even looking at the fact that the negotiations are still ongoing, but we are in a spirit of give and take. My worry is different. My worry is all about timing.
Let me return to my earlier question and bring you in, Professor Naituli. Is the president benefiting from this war of words that is happening between MPs and the Senate? And let me push it further. Those who claim that there's a war against devolution, they say that is how he's playing it, because he knows as long as I give MPs what they need, be it staggered or not, they'll be on my side on this devolution question.
I don't know. I don't think the president needs anybody to be on his side, because their duties are very well enumerated in the Constitution. That is, the powers are very designated there. I think what is happening on a deeper level is the immaturity. What you are saying is the immaturity of us as our people. Some of us, the immaturity is expressed in the desire, for example, to have a national flag in your car. That's just symbolism, in the desire to have even having a bigger salary, instead of putting in the service ahead of yourself, offering yourself to serve the public, you go for money. So what you are saying between the tussle between Senate and the Parliament is immaturity, because these people know that they must cooperate. They know where they disagree, because we copied this system from the US, let's face it. Those, when there is different in bills emanating from Parliament and emanating to the Senate, then they send them to a conference committee. We sort out the differences. And then they come back having sorted. If they fail to sort out the difference, the motion may die. These people know exactly what needs to be done. They don't want to do that because of the egos. Now, ego, when you have exaggerated egos, it shows the degree of immaturity in that group of people. So we have not matured to the level where we face issues and then we sort it in a very mature way, and where we disagree, we just disagree.
Professor?
I think the president can only be a beneficiary to this quarrel between the Senate and the Parliament, or even Senate stroke county government plus, against Parliament, if indeed the president does not believe in devolution.
And in these 100 days, and I know it's a short time to implement such a system, have you seen commitment or movements by the state that say we are committed to devolution?
And if you remember the first question you asked me, what I can score, I am scoring them 3% out because I'm looking at the Constitution, 3 out of 100%. And that means I'm disappointed by the government's approach to this devolution. The president speaks about devolution, the deputy president speaks devolution, but when you see his lieutenants and the lieutenants of the deputy president, they talk as if they don't want devolution. And that is really the concern we have, and they are not doing much. Even when they extended certain things and, government announced that we are going to give you, if you are ready to do devolution, we shall allow you to take up the services. They are setting up the county governments to fail, and even with the focus on flags and so on, there are controls. Even the budget controller can veto some of the budget arrangements of governors and say this is not right.
I know.
So sorry.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry, we are out of time. It always runs away with us. But Moses, very quickly, your position, I think, on devolution and the budgetary commitment superseding what the Constitution says, I think is clear. If you could give us your final comments on the Jubilee government's scorecard and also bring in the question of security. The first 50 days, I think we saw some of the worst attacks that we've seen in Western Kenya, and up till now, we don't know what's going on.
I think I will give a much fairer scorecard than what Professor gives out there, in the sense that we are just in July, so we are only, I think, 14 days into the budget, the new budgetary year. Within this year, we have got money set aside for laptops, 15 billion. We've got money set aside for agriculture for the 1 million, Garana project. We've got the maternity, the free maternity care rolling out. I think what this government is doing, in my opinion, is the same thing that Kibaki did in 2003. That despite the fact that there was so much noises and so much distractions, he says, I'm going to focus on HIV, I'm going to focus on free education, I'm going to focus on bringing down the interest rates. So because noises will always be there. I mean, how can you tell Professor Kisiangani to not to make noise? But what you need to do,
you are the greatest noise maker. I mean, I knew you are going to defend this system. You cannot come here to this region and start defending this system.
You need to keep your eyes on the ball, despite how many noises you get out there.
I'm not making noise.
Keep your eyes and keep your mind on the critical path, because at the end of the day, you'll be judged by the results you can show and how much you withstand, noises and
Professor Naituli, please, this is how
tell them to accept devolution and pay the teachers.
Professor Kisiangani, please, let your colleagues speak. Your final comments, sir.
My final comment is these people are taking time to set up systems because
how long will they take?
The systems are being set. They are not going to take that too long, but I can see that they are very systematically setting up systems. They need to build the county human capital that is not there in the counties. So the devolution is working, in my opinion, and I'm very optimistic personally. But they have a problem with the implementation of this laptop project. And I'm happy I listened to the president when you're talking to the press that they're also going to include the laboratories in every school labs, because it wouldn't be quite a disaster if you are issuing a laptop to these toddlers the same way you issue an exercise book. That is not going to work. But what they are doing now, if they are going to have a lab in every school, and then the electricity process, there is spin-off, economic spin-offs in that project.
And
so
that
the project is more probably thought through than they have been able to inform the public. And I want to support them what he's saying, they have not been able to carry the public with them. The other thing, they need to get the teachers to buy in into
to
this project.
deal. Forgive me, sir.
Yes.
This is how it goes on Checkpoint. I would just be so honored to host you again. Thank you so much for coming. That's Professor Itile Naituli in the middle, our new panelist this evening. Professor Edward Kisiangani to my far right. You need to shake Moses Kuria's hand for good measure, just so that everybody knows that on
He's
Checkpoint
not a good man.
knows that there's no drama behind it. We're taking a short break. I'll be back with the sports next.